Welcome back to Transitional Leadership. I'm Kelly Hearn, and today we are talking about employee engagement and productivity, how they work together or work against each other, and how you can support your managers through to better productivity because of better engagement. So, first, let me just paint you a picture. I was talking to a prospect recently, and she said, I am so tired. My brain is foggy, my body's exhausted, but I cannot sleep. I just can't turn it off. Her shrugged shoulders and puffy eyes told me everything and more than what her words could actually even describe. She had just been promoted for the third time in 7 years, and rather than being energized by this new opportunity, she looked like she had been wrestling all night. Honestly, she hadn't even applied for these last two promotions. It just seemed like she was the obvious choice because she was willing to take on the added responsibility. Her department results were holding steady. They weren't improving, but they weren't getting worse. And she caught every single ball that her boss threw at her. All the while, her own productivity was floundering. She was getting less done and working at least 1.5 times the hours. And she had no idea how long she'd been able to keep her head above water. Now, she was inquiring on coaching. We were talking about the potential of me supporting her individually to get to a better spot. And I respect that she is going to take initiative on that. However, I can't imagine what an overall impact leader development as a whole would have on this situation. Because if she seemed like the most obvious choice for the promotion, that tells me the state of the management and the state of the engagement for the rest of her peers. So let's look at that a little bit closer because does falling engagement really impact productivity? Now, in 2024, engagement dropped across the country. It fell to 21%. That means about 80% of people were either moderately unengaged or disengaged. They were not putting in their full effort, not coming to work with their full heart. But that also means that some of them are actively disengaged. They're looking for other jobs. They're maybe even working specifically against the company that they're currently at. This is only the second time that this has dropped in the past 12 years. The other drop in engagement since the Great Recession was 2020. I don't think our goal is to stay on par with those two events. We had the Great Recession in 2008. We had engagement slowly climbing up. We get to 2020, it drops again. We start coming up a little bit, and 2024 drops again. There is one group that is disproportionately driving this score down, and that is direct and middle management. That means that the sales manager is feeling stressed every single day, saying, I don't have enough people to hit the call quota. It means the director of customer service is saying, I'm focused on KPI, but I can't build trust with my team because I only have time to look at the numbers. It means that that prospect I mentioned is in the beginning being so mentally drained that she can just feel it in her bones. You don't have to be contented cow to be productive at work. Now, what does that mean? Contented cow is the theory that if you give cows lush green grass, if you give them bright sunny weather, they will produce more and better milk. And I'll be honest, I don't know if that works for cows or not. Not sure if Kemp's is feeding them better grass. But what I do know is that it does not work for people because you will not go and play ping pong in the break room if you're worried that your team doesn't have the people it needs. It does not matter if people give you free pizza and donuts on Fridays if you are physically drained and that sugar boost just is not going to cut it. To make matters worse, employee engagement is 70%. impacted by your manager. That means that every single sales rep on that team who is working for the manager that says, I don't have the staff that I need to be successful, is pulling 70% of their engagement, 70% of their commitment to the job that they do from that manager. So if the manager is, moderately engaged at best, they are 70% more likely to be at that same level. It is difficult for someone to exceed the engagement of a manager who's low. That prospect that I was talking about, she has a 70% impact on the energy levels of everyone that reports to her. Now, that means that I will not be surprised if our next Gallup State of the Global Workforce has even more staggering numbers. If the 2025 numbers say that we have dropped yet again for the third time in 12 years, because the managers that are disengaged now are impacting so many people and to such a large extent. So, what do we do about this, right? I don't need to be the person who comes on YouTube and gives you all the doom and gloom. If you have worked in a corporate or if you have been in middle management before, you know that typically when engagement numbers come in, the senior leaders task the department managers and the supervisors with creating action plans to address the numbers for their team. It's not a bad strategy. I am not here to attack the strategy because the idea is that those closest to those impacted, disengaged people should be the ones who address the problem directly. We want to go to the source. But this time, the source is at the management level. So that means that it isn't the managers who need to create the action plan, it's senior leadership. Because I know everybody is busy, I'm going to just give you a 2-point plan here, right? Just 2 points. That's even short for me on how to high when is busy. I get it. I am going to break this down for you and give you a 2-point action plan for the high level leaders who need to invest in re engaging, reinvigorating, re energizing, and they can help all of the people in their organization who are feeling the way that my prospect did. So, the first one, number one, write this down. You need to teach the leadership fundamentals. Less than 20% of managers have had leadership training, according to Gartner. And that means that 85% of people who are in leadership roles have no fundamentals, no basics, no building blocks on how to do their job. Think of it this way. If there was a hospital with one doctor who went to medical school, and one trained nurse, the rest of the staff, they gave them stethoscopes. They made sure that they had watched a lot of Grey's Anatomy, and they knew that they were pretty good at putting on a band aid and maybe finding an ice pack. Would you go to that hospital? Even if you had to go there, would you trust it? Probably not. You wouldn't be confident in their abilities, and neither would they. And usually that's how leaders are promoted. There's one or two people, right? That 15-20% of people who actually are trained in what they do. And the rest of them are just asked to supervise, not because they're equipped for that job, because they were equipped for a different role. So maybe they were a school nurse who had to do some very basic medication dispensing and band aids and ice packs. And they were like, you know what? You're pretty good at that one. Do you want to be head nurse at our hospital? No, that doesn't fit. Or do you think you should be a surgeon now? Probably not. Now, worse than that, we have these middle managers who are chosen from the supervisors who have lasted the longest. So this would be like saying, you've watched every season of Grey's Anatomy. I think you are ready to be chief of the hospital. You didn't run from the hospital for a year after we promoted you that first time for a job you weren't ready for. You're probably ready to take on the next one. It's no wonder that more than half of the managers are reporting high levels of consistent stress. They're trying to do more with less in a role that they were never taught how to do. Okay, so again, I'm not trying to be all doom and gloom. What are we going to do about it? We're going to teach the fundamentals. So, in this first action plan, we're going to teach your leaders how to lead. Start out by going to your HR department. Go to L&D and see what curriculum they have that they've built in-house or that they've contracted for. You can also hire an outside consultant. I have worked with numerous businesses to get this in place in their place of work, right? Train your leaders to do the work that you're actually asking them to do. Remember, this is for the well being of those who are keeping your company going. They're keeping the retention of your specialized employees. They are actually organizing how the work gets done. Let's give them the skills to motivate, to influence, to have difficult conversations, to manage change. Training engages your managers and equips them to drive results and engagement in their teams. Because remember, it's not a trickle down, it's like a waterfall. If you are engaging these managers, they have a 70% impact on everyone who reports to them. Now, they knew how to be productive themselves, and that's great. They were really good at putting on those band aids. But now we have to teach them, we have to train them and equip them to step in that bigger role. Inspire other people to be productive, train other people on how to do that work, and find the best ways to do it too. Leadership training takes them from constantly putting out fires, running around and fixing all the band aids on the knees that they need to fix, to actually influencing and changing behaviors that can prevent those fires in the first place. Does that sound good? Does that sound like something you can do? Build out your leadership curriculum. And again, you can work with a consultant. It doesn't have to be me. There are other leadership consultants out there, but do something to build this foundation for your staff. You will be reaping the benefits of it for years and years to come. Okay, next, we need to facilitate ongoing development. Now, think about it. Those 15 to 20% of managers who are actually trained leaders, most of them are sort of treated like a one hit wonder, right? The organization either built or contracted some on demand virtual training on leadership theory, and then they just patted themselves on the back because they checked the box. They knew that this already put them in an elite group and they were proud of themselves for the work that they did. And again, I do think that there's room to be proud of yourselves for that, but don't just check the box and move on. Knowing that you're above average does not mean that it's time to stop. I mean, think about how much things change. The leadership building blocks might not change. The fundamentals might remain the same, although they do change a little over time. But the situations that your management team is in, those are changing constantly, and things are never quite as simple as they seem to be the first time around. So consider this: you have a brand new manager, you put them through your leader training, they learn all about performance management plans, right? They were probably a top performer because they were really good at putting those band aids on. They were really good at building the widgets. That's why we put them in a supervisor role. So performance management is likely very new to them, except for the stigma around it. What the person that you promoted up probably knows about it is that slackers have to go through performance management. And what they're learning in that first training that they go through, that first basic leadership development when they're brand new supervisors, they're learning that it's a ton of work for the supervisor to go through. So their takeaway from training is that slackers need performance management and it could take months to remove a poor performer. But now, fast forward a few years, and they have a team member who is typically solid, but they're going through a divorce. They have had a death in the family. They're going through some sort of particularly difficult time, and it is carrying over into their work. So you talk to HR because you don't know what to do with that. And HR suggests a performance plan. Suddenly, performance management takes on this whole new meaning for you. It's not the red tape that you have to go through to terminate a slacker. It's a structured way to support a valued member of your team and help them to regain control of this one aspect of their life and hope that that creates a ripple effect everywhere else. What an important new lens for you to see something that basic through. Except now you're an experienced leader. So you did your leadership training. Now you're on your own time. So now you're building the plane while you fly it. You're trying to do your own mental work to erase the stigma while you're trying to help this employee through it as well. So it's like building the plane while you fly it, and you're watching all of these important bolts and sheet metal fall as you go, but you don't have the bandwidth to pick them up. So, what are we going to do about that? Managers and leaders need consistent support. They need to be able to process these new situations and these increasingly complex realities. Some companies will simply just redeploy their on demand training so that their leaders have it on an annual basis, an as needed basis, whatever it is. And that's certainly an option, right? That's something that you can easily check the box with. Again, you can put that need all on the shoulders of your leaders, but your staff is busy, right? We already talked about that. We know that. Their plates are full. So they're going to find a way to bypass that training if it's required at certain intervals, or they're going to multitask their way through it because they've done it before and they feel like they need to check the box. There is a good way to see this accomplished, though. The best way that I have seen it work for continued support after we've given the foundation of leadership is facilitated groups that follow the training. So, group discussions allow each leader to get their own questions answered by an expert facilitator, and they can learn from their peers within the group because everybody's asking questions, everybody's offering suggestions. They can get more lenses now and prepare for solutions to situations that they didn't even realize that they were going to need to be equipped for. My favorite example of this was starting with a lack of communication in IT. So I had taught this class for a variety of leaders from all kinds of different departments. Those are the best ones because you get the best diversity of thought in that training. But as we went through and continued on with our group discussions, this IT leader had been talking about how his team was so quiet. They weren't sharing all of the tense issues, all of the frustrating things. He knew he needed more feedback from them, but he was having trouble getting them to talk. And so as we talked through it, he got the idea to ask them what they thought other people were going through in IT. So it took the spotlight off of them. People weren't feeling called out anymore, and they were able to give a voice to other people and feel like they were helping them rather than kind of asking and advocating for themselves. It was a great way to just get the ball rolling. So, this IT leader came back and shared how that worked, that he had started asking about other people and gave them that opportunity to speak. The marketing manager then kind of chuckled to herself and said, "My people have no problem talking for each other. They have no problem talking for themselves. And what they say is, this is a problem and everybody has it." So, being inspired by this IT leader, she flipped it on its head and she said she would go back to her team and say, "Okay, tell me specifically who you think has this problem." So, if everybody is having problems with submissions, is it truly everybody? Or is it the digital marketers? Or is it the internal communication specialists? Who is it? And that would help her get more specified information as she worked with her team. There was also a sales leader in there. And His people had no issue giving direct and concise feedback that applied specifically to them. But what he noticed was that people were excited to share the problems of other people. It happened both in IT and in marketing. People feel like they're doing a service to someone else when they highlight a problem that that person has. So he was actually able to use it with customers. He could go back to the customer or back to his team and say, "Hey, as you are on your sales calls, I want you to ask for four other people who have the specific problems that that new customer had." So they actually got four new leads from every sales conversation that they had. It was amazing. It went from IT is having trouble getting people to communicate to sales has a 4x increase in their warm leads. What an amazing transition of just having these heads in a room, virtually or physically. Okay, even with just 2 points, I know I've given you a lot today. We've talked about theory, we've talked about methodology, we've talked about group support, we've talked about individual results that come out of it. So, really, what it all boils down to is the three P's. Our people need to have some presentation, they need to be able to practice, and they need to be able to produce. Your managers need to feel supported in their position. They need to know that there is a reason to look ahead to the future. These points will bridge that gap in increasing their engagement, which again has a 70% impact on their employees. And what it all boils down to is learning and growing through that presentation, practice, and production. We will present to them how to lead effectively and allow them to practice what they've learned. That's what teaching the fundamentals, hello presentation, and those group dynamics, practice, are all about. That's what they're there for. Then they are able to produce the results through their application, impacting productivity overall. Now, I can only imagine what that prospect that I talked about in the beginning would have looked like and sounded like if she had had these in her organization. If she had gotten the presentation, if she had gotten the information that she needed, if she had been able to practice those skills, how much more would she have produced and how much more would her team have produced? Now, there certainly still would have been a lot of work on her plate, but instead of that slumped posture and the drooping eyes, I imagine I would have seen a woman who was eager to attack this challenge and overcome anything that came her way. All right, I hope that this was helpful. This is one that you might want to share with your HR department because they need to understand how those Gallup results are impacting organizations across the country and what they can do to get ahead of it so that they aren't part of that statistic for 2025 results. All right, I will see you in the next one, guys.